Yes. Before we start, lost a friend of mine. His name Tom. Thomas Black. He passed away. Great guy. My condolences out to him and his family. But it's been a little tough right now. But welcome to the Beat 139. I'm Doc.
I'm Don Vito. How y'all doing?
Welcome everybody. I'm Callie.
Okay, we would like to introduce our first guest for tonight. Prolific, legendary, change maker, author, and some say outrageous, New York-based personal injury and civil rights attorney, Sanford Rubenstein. Welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you.
It's always important to be out there for the community, and that's what you're doing with this show, and I'm happy to be a guest on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're honored to have you, sir.
Welcome.
Honored to have you. So let's just tell everybody where you grew up at.
I actually grew up in the Ravenswood housing projects in Long Island City, Queens, and one of the articles that was written about me was called From the Projects to the Penthouse, because the penthouse I live in now in Manhattan overlooks the projects in Queens when you look over the river. So when I stand in my study and look out the window, I saw my roots, and I never forgot my roots. And that's one of the reasons I'm so concerned about what's going on with the New York City Housing Authority today, and the horrible conditions people are living in, and the terrible injuries children are suffering because of the lead paint. It's horrible. And one of the things that we're doing is trying to help those who have been injured as the result of the negligence and carelessness of the Housing Authority. It's terrible.
So where's your business located?
We're in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn on Court Street. I actually started out in Bedford-Stuyvesant in a storefront at Thrupper Myrtle. And unfortunately, after a gun was put to my head twice back in the roaring 80s, so to speak, we decided to move the office downtown to Court Street. And now, if you look at what's going on downtown Brooklyn, all the new office space, all the new condominiums, it's really a very good place to be. So I'm happy to say that I spent over 45 years of my career as a lawyer in Brooklyn. So actually I was born in Brooklyn. So I'm a Brooklyn-based lawyer, but we do cases all over the city, all over the state, all over the country.
What inspired you to be a lawyer?
Well, it said lawyer in the yearbook when I graduated from high school when they asked me what I wanted to be. There was a lawyer who represented my parents. Now remember, my parents raised myself and my sister in the projects in Ravenswood, and when we became teenagers, they felt they really wanted to do better for us, and they bought a little house up in Rockland County, and it was perhaps the least expensive house you could buy. And they went to a lawyer named Arnold Becker, I even remember his name, whose mother was friends with my parents' mother. And they showed him so much respect, and he gave them advice, and they listened. They took everything he said as valid and followed his advice. And I saw that as a young adolescent, and I said, wow, look at the respect this man has because he's a lawyer. And it made me interested in becoming a lawyer. And I went to night school at Brooklyn Law School to accomplish that. Well, I actually taught public school right here in Harlem during the Vietnam years.
So, Mr. Rubenstein, what kind of cases are you basically dealing with right now?
Well, we're dealing with some very serious cases involving some horrible tragedies that occurred here in New York. One of the cases we recently finished and resolved for the family for a $3.3 million settlement from the city was the tragedy of Khalif Browder. That tragedy resulted in the city deciding they're going to close Rikers. Because when we do a case, yes, it's important to get money damages for the victims or the victim's family, but it's also important to get change. So what happened to one victim doesn't happen to another. And we hope that the tragedy of the death of Khalif Browder, who killed himself 2 years after he was released from Rikers, having spent 400 days in the hole, will change the system so that Rikers gets closed and we'll never have another tragedy like the horrible tragedy of the death of Khalif Browder. We also are well known for having done the Abner Louima police torture case, and there's a police officer still in jail as a result of what he did to Abner in the bathroom of a precinct house here in Brooklyn. It's hard to believe it happened over 20 years ago. So a lot of the young people here in the city don't know the horrible tragedy of what happened to Abner Louima when police officers took him into a bathroom in a precinct house, and one of them sodomized him,
Oh,
causing
wow.
horrible injuries, leaving him in his cell, probably hoping he would die and bleed to death.
Right.
Right, but, he
But
got
Abner
through
was
it.
a strong guy and a very, very good guy. And he lived through it, lived through to testify at the trial, the criminal trial, and is now happy living with his family in Florida. But what happened there never should have happened. And we got some change also in the manner in which policing occurs in New York City. But it wasn't enough to save Sean Bell, another case that we did, the killing of Sean Bell in Queens. And we got a very fast settlement for the mother of his two children. They're supposed to get married the next day, as well as the other two friends who were in the car and got shot. That was the 50-shot case.
Wow.
So I've done a lot of high-profile cases, but we also do cases in which people get injured through
That's
negligence.
what I need your advice on.
Oh, no, finish talking.
Yeah, through the negligence of whether it's the schools, the police, or private entities.
Well, what I wanted to ask, okay, I was injured, right? I had broke my hand from the knuckle down to the wrist. I was out of work for a year, but I still got workers' comp. But the job who I work for, they never hired me back, and I'm still feeling pain in my hand, and they told me I had up to 2 years to sue. So what do you suggest?
Well, the question becomes, can you sue for damages if it was a workers' comp case? Because there's a whole system of compensation under the workers' comp system in which if you're injured because of the negligence of your employer or one of your co-employees, you can't go to court and get a damage award. You have to go within the system and take what the schedule of awards are under the workers' compensation system. So I'll be happy to talk to you after we tape the show to see if you have a third-party case. Because what a lot of people don't understand and don't know is, if you're injured in a situation at the job and you get workers' comp, if the injury was caused by the negligence or carelessness of a third party, someone other than your employer, you can collect workers' comp, and then you can bring an action for damages against the responsible party who is not your employer or your co-employee. And of course, the workers' comp has a lien against the recovery. But if you don't recover, you still get the workers' comp. And if you do recover, you can get an award a lot greater than what the workers' comp schedule allows.
Right.
Have you ever lost any high-profile case?
Fortunately, I haven't lost any high-profile cases. But any lawyer who says that I've never lost a case is just not level with you.
Right.
Because you know what? The bottom line is this. You never know what a jury's going to do. So 90% of our cases get resolved after a jury is selected, during the trial, before a verdict comes in. But when we have to take a verdict, we take the verdict. And I think the best example of a case in which we took a verdict was a case that I tried with my malpractice team, my medical malpractice team. Terrible, terrible case. Mother gets an appointment for surgery for something minor at a hospital in Long Island, goes in for the surgery, a full woman, comes out, both legs amputated,
Oh, wow.
and deaf. The jury in that case awarded her $62 million, and verdicts don't necessarily mean that's what you get. The case was resolved in the appellate division, which is the appeals court, for less. But the truth of the matter is, when the doctor in that case testified before the jury, he was so belligerent. God made me a doctor. Jury heard that, and they weren't very sympathetic to him. And here you have a young woman, a mother, lost both her legs.
So
And
what
went
was the
deaf
reason?
because
What
of
was the reason for that? Did they have like the wrong
No,
paperwork?
medical malpractice, because she got an infection called sepsis. It wasn't diagnosed in time, and it wasn't properly treated. As a matter of fact, the testimony showed that the doctor who was responsible for her care took off for Florida
Oh, wow.
while she was in bad shape. At the end of the day, no one can ever get enough money to have a terrible injury like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no legs,
Once it
no
happens,
arms, like, that's crazy.
you have a right to compensation if it happened through no fault of your own and through the medical malpractice of physicians or hospitals.
So do you look for cases or do cases look for you?
Cases always come to me. My phone just doesn't stop. People know who I am here in New York City. They call and we try to help, not just with the big high-profile cases, but with smaller cases as well, in which people are entitled to damages.
All right, so who was one of your mentors? I think you mentioned something about Johnny Cochran and stuff like that.
When I was asked to represent Abner Louima, the family had decided to put together a team, and they brought in, right after the OJ case, Johnny Cochran Jr., who I have to tell you was the smoothest, most strategic lawyer I've ever met. And I was fortunate enough, as a result of working with him in the Louima case, to handle cases all over the country with him. And I consider him my mentor. And his death at a young age, he died in his early 60s, was a tragedy for all of us.
Yeah, it was.
But when people saw Johnny, he really cared about them and really cared about helping them. And a wonderful story I can tell you and share with you about Johnny was at the beginning of the Louima case, he had come to my office in Brooklyn. It was the first time he was ever in Brooklyn. He's a California guy. And we were walking over to the U.S. Attorney's Office, who was prosecuting the cops criminally, to have a meeting with him to decide how we were going to handle the civil case, which we were representing Louima in. And we decided to stay away from the criminal case and not even be in the courtroom when it was tried. So we come out of my office, and it was Johnny Cochran, Barry Scheck, and Peter Neufeld, two other very well-known criminal lawyers who were instrumental in creating the Innocent Program, which, as you probably know, has been able to bring justice for those who were wrongly convicted. And we're walking out of my building, which is 16 Court Street, and we're walking towards the U.S. Attorney's Office, which is only a few blocks away. We're about a block and a half away, and I think it's Barry turns to me and says, "Where's Johnny?" Well, we look around, we don't see Johnny. I said, "Look, I'll go back and retrace our steps and see if I can find him." Sure enough, there was Johnny right in front of the building, 16 Court Street, that we had left, talking to a passerby. The passerby had engaged him, and it was just as important to him to talk to the passerby about whatever they were talking about as seeing the U.S. attorney prosecuting the Louima case. So, of course, I dragged him away from the passerby, and we went and had our meeting with Zach Carter, who was the U.S. attorney then. But it just showed you how much Johnny cared about people. And he was just such a brilliant strategist, a brilliant trial lawyer, and just such a good guy. It was a terrible loss when he died.
What makes them call you outrageous?
That's another great story. I was representing Reverend Al Sharpton at the time, and it was in a commercial matter of some sort. I don't even recall exactly what. And the New York Post did an editorial, and they said the only one more outrageous than Sharpton is his lawyer Rubenstein, the outrageous Rubenstein, for representing him in this criminal matter.
Right.
So I decided to turn it on him, and I called my book "The Outrageous Rubenstein." But what it's really about is how a media-savvy trial lawyer fights for justice and change. And we talk about a number of cases we've done where not only did we get money damages for victims, but we also got change so that what happened again to one victim doesn't happen to the next.
Right.
And there's examples of that in the book, and I think it's well written because I wrote it, but I think it's easy reading, and it really gives you insight into the civil justice system in our country.
Can you share to the viewers what, like the rights that immigrants have and stuff like that?
One of the things that the public is not aware of, especially the immigrants themselves, is if you're a non-documented immigrant, you have the same rights as a citizen to get damages if you're wronged by someone else. So if you get injured in an accident, suffer medical malpractice, been a victim of police brutality, and you're an undocumented immigrant, you can go to court and get the damages you're entitled to. The fact that you are not properly documented or overstayed your visa doesn't mean that you can't get damages when you are wrong. That's a Supreme Court case, and that's the law of the land.
So, out of all your cases, right, what case, touch you the most, far as this is, heartfelt case?
Well, a lot of them are such terrible tragedies.
Yeah, there are a lot of them.
They're heartfelt. But I did a case in which a young child was walking to school with her grandmother, and a drunken driver who never should have been on the road because he didn't even have a license that was proper, mounted the sidewalk and killed this young girl. And the family's grief was terrible. Matter of fact, there's a sign in New York City on the street where it happened, named now, after the child. And in that case, the family wanted more than just a recovery. They wanted to get some change. And I think we got some change with the way that the law handles these types of things.
So what's your affiliation with Al Sharpton?
Well, for almost 20 years, I represented Reverend Sharpton in the National Action Network in many legal matters. I now represent Hawk Newsom, the president of Black Lives Matter, Greater New York, and I try to stay involved representing civil rights organizations and civil rights leaders, especially the young ones who are just coming up now. Young Reverend Kevin McCall, for example, is one of those new young leaders who is coming up, as well as Hawk Newsom. So it's important for me to try to help young civil rights activists, young leaders, to become all they're capable of being.
So, Mr. Rubenstein, let me ask, what will be one of your solutions for immigration reform?
Well, first of all, I stood at the same spot that Martin Luther King stood at the Riverside Church when he condemned President Johnson at the time for the war in Vietnam, and I condemned the policies of the Trump administration. We do not need the wall. What we need is to have what the Statue of Liberty represents, and that is the opportunity for those who come from other countries to America to be involved in our country and help our country. We shouldn't be afraid of immigrants. I mean, I come from a family in which my grandparents were immigrants. Most of us who are here have immigrant families.
Yes, I do.
So I think that the policies of the Trump administration are unacceptable. And I think that the easy solution is in 2020 to elect somebody else as president.
Yeah,
That is the easiest
I agree
solution.
on that. Let's get a clap on that.
That-
That's a fact.
So what's your solution on immigration reform?
Look, I think the Democrats and the Republicans have to come together, especially on DACA, these young kids who were given an opportunity by the Obama administration to stay here and live their lives here. They have to come together to reach an agreement on an immigration policy that's going to work in this country. And that's for the elected officials to do. But they've got to come together. This idea that there's no way that's going to happen, I can't accept. So Congress has to get together, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and then the President, and come to an agreement with regard to how to deal with immigration in this country. And what's outstanding is the fact that you see so many people from other countries desperate to come here because of the opportunity that America has. And America still has that opportunity, and like I mentioned earlier, where someone can go from the projects to the penthouse. That opportunity is real.
Right.
And so many who live in other countries that are under a lot of pressure because of the problems in those countries want to be here to have the opportunity that America has always given to its immigrants.
Trump feel that without the immigrants, that the people who's from this country will have a better chance with the job. The unemployment list will be cut down. So he's saying that all the immigrants taking up all the jobs and everything.
Look, the realistic facts are that we see now, with all this attempt by the Trump administration to keep immigrants out, unemployment in this country is at its lowest levels. It's a matter of getting immigration reform in Congress so that people have the opportunity to live in this country and to do well and to raise their families here.
Yeah, because he keep bringing up the violence with the MS-13 and groups like that. He said the Muslim groups. He bring up them as far as they come up here and wreaking havoc to this country.
Look, there's no question that the MS-13 terrorists, so to speak, who are out there in Long Island killing people, not only has to be stopped, but they have to be put in jail or deported. But that doesn't mean that all immigrants are bad. That's only a very, very, very small percentage of immigrants. And if you look at the success of immigrants in this country, and how immigrants have helped build this country, whether it's Irish immigrants who build railroads, we need to have the opportunity here that has existed to continue.
I agree.
So what made you write this book? Let's talk about the book.
I felt it was important to demonstrate to the public that what we do as lawyers is not just get money for victims. We also fight for change so that what happens to one victim doesn't happen to another. And that's what so many of my cases do. Tomorrow, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be at a rally in City Hall at 12 o'clock, and I invite anyone who's watching to come and participate. It's a rally that's being held by the mental health professionals to say to the NYPD, stop killing the mentally ill. I represent now 4 families of mentally ill people who were killed by the police in this city. Now there's a protocol that's supposed to be followed by police. It's not being followed when they deal with someone who's mentally ill, and there's a lack of training. Only 1/3 of police officers in this city have been trained in how to deal with the mentally ill. They're supposed to try to isolate them. They're supposed to try to call those who have been trained in how to deal with the mentally ill. Instead, they shoot and kill. That should not be happening. And we're doing this rally tomorrow to tell the mayor, you have to take action because it's unacceptable that mentally ill people are dying at the hands of police. The family calls up 911 and says, I need help. My mentally ill son is out of control. He didn't take his medicine. He's acting out. Could you please send an ambulance and take him to the hospital so they can get him his medicine and make him take it? Well, what happens is, unfortunately, in a number of cases, police come and the next thing you know, this mentally ill person is shot to death. This has to stop.
And where's this location going to be?
City Hall, 12 o'clock tomorrow. And we have a demonstration to tell the mayor that and the police commissioner that they have to train 100% of the officers in the police force, not just 1/3. It's going at a snail's pace, the training.
So, Mr. Rubenstein, so the outrageous Rubenstein book consists of 170 pages, right? So what can you tell our audience as far as what juicy things they have to look forward in here that they'll be coming across?
Well, I would suggest that it's an easy read. Read the whole book. You'll learn about some of the stuff that's never been written about, the Admiral Louima police torture, the Sean Bell case, and other cases in which we've represented victims.
Wow. Did you ever thought about getting into politics?
Actually, I served in government. After I got married a long time ago and started to raise a family, I moved my family to Rockland County, and we lived in the town of Ramapo, which happened to be where my family moved when they left the projects. And I ended up running for the county legislature, and I served as a county legislator representing the town of Ramapo for 20 years. I was the majority leader. So I sort of know the workings of government, understand it from inside, which makes me able to be really good at fighting for change. Because a lot of the change we need, we have to lobby the state legislature, the governor. What politicians do in government is very important in the lives of the people of the city, state, and country. So I think it's important for people to register to vote, very important, and go out and vote.
Yeah, that's definitely a fact.
And that's a message. If you haven't registered, register to vote, because you can complain a lot, but if your voice is not heard at the ballot box,
it doesn't
your
matter.
complaints, do not matter.
What's your take on stop and frisk?
Well, I was one of those on the front line of the major demonstration to end stop and frisk. And I happen to believe strongly that stop and frisk was totally unnecessary, and it criminalized so many young people who never should have been criminalized. Because what would happen is, a police officer would tell someone against the wall, I didn't do anything wrong, what are you doing? All of a sudden there's words, and the cop arrests him for interfering with governmental administration. That's a problem when you want to get a job. That's a problem in a lot of things in life. Never should have happened. And stop and frisk was a bad policy. And what we've learned since government stopped stop and frisk, and I believe that's the reason de Blasio was elected mayor, because he was the only candidate who said he would stop and frisk, that we haven't seen any increase in crime because stop and frisk was eliminated. So the whole basis for stop and frisk was false. It was a criminalization of young people in the community, which was uncalled for. And now that we have a policy in which stop and frisk is not the policy of the NYPD, we have not seen crime increase. As a matter of fact, we've seen crime decrease. So I'm proud to have been on the front lines demonstrating to stop and frisk.
Yeah, because it seemed like the reason why I brought that up is because it's like mainly they use stop and frisk in the urban communities, you know? Like they target the urban communities.
Well, it was the policy of the NYPD.
Right.
So the truth of the matter is, we've learned through history now that stop and frisk doesn't work to reduce crime. The whole purpose of it was to try to get guns off the street. And we need to get guns off the street. There's no question about it. But it really didn't help do that. And as I said earlier, what it did was criminalize young people. It was the wrong policy at the wrong time.
All right, so go ahead.
No.
Where you see yourself for the next 5 years?
I'm going this way.
Yeah, sure, right. We got a lot to ask you, man. We was waiting for you to come. Where you see yourself for the next 5 years? What do you got going? Like, well, you did so much already. Is what I'm saying.
You know, we have a very important case coming up. A trial in the Bronx, a stabbing by one student of another, killing him at a school in the Bronx. That trial's coming up soon. You know, I never know what cases are going to happen, what tragedies are going to happen, what rights have to be wrong until the phone rings. So we'll see how the phone rings in the next 5 years, and we'll see what other cases that I get involved in.
Right.
All right, so where can people find you, like they need your legal advice?
Very easy. It's a toll-free number, 1-800-447-HURT. That's 1-800-447-HURT. And as I say on the commercial, call now.
Yes.
Yeah, that commercial was big for me, like growing up. You know, you see that every day. You seeing that. So, what inspired you to do that commercial?
Well, in addition to having a law degree, I happen to have done a master's in business administration, majoring in marketing. And the first class in advertising, the professor said, class, if you build a better mousetrap, will people beat a path to your door? And we're all sitting there, duh. And then he said, advertising. And he's right. People need to know there's a phone number they can call. As I said earlier, 1-800-447-HURT. We don't charge for advice. It's always a free consultation. And in my field, we don't require retainers. We take a percentage, usually 1/3 of the recovery. So someone who has no money, who has no assets, if they're hurt through the negligence of another, or suffer medical malpractice or police brutality, they can come to a law firm like ours, Rubenstein and get representation. And at the end of the case, we get paid, but they don't have to come with money.
Right.
And we're happy to give free consultations to anyone who needs one. So as I said, once again, the phone number, 1-800-447-HURT, free consultations.
That's promotion for your kids out there who want to learn about promotion, like you said, marketing. You know, he gave his number out like 4 or 5 times. That's definitely very important. We like to enlighten our audience, you know, the kids about like certain things, certain avenues of the business world also.
I think that's good. I think that young people today have opportunities for school, for college, and they should take advantage of those opportunities, particularly here in New York City and New York State. And I'm happy always to give advice to young people, because that's the future of our country.
Yeah, cause we help the kids a lot. Like we have a curriculum here where we're gonna have kids come here, get behind the mic, and also, you know, try to build them up also what they doing with their future. So we're doing a lot of work with the kids also.
No, I think that's a real good thing to do, and if I can help in any way, I'm happy to.
All right.
Yeah, well, we thank you for coming. You see, I was excited. I couldn't even let you finish sometimes to jump in. Doc, you see, Doc had to let him speak.
Yeah.
Excited, so excited that you're here today. And a lot of questions that I need answered, you answered. But like you said, I will definitely speak to you afterwards. Yes, I'm excited about that.
But is there anything that you want to share to the people
No, I think
that we didn't touch on?
I think one of the things that the public has to be alert to is the attempts at what's called tort reform. And that's an attempt to stop the rights that people have to recover for injuries if they've been injured through the negligence of another. And this is attempts by big business, by big corporate entities to hurt the little guy. Because in today's society, here in this city, in this state, in this country, if someone's injured through the negligence of another, they have the right to bring an action and collect damages. Tort reform would take that away. It's the wrong way to go. It's the big guy trying to smash the little guy, and we should not allow it to happen. So tort reform, it's a bad word. And when you hear it, you know what it really stands for. What it really stands for is taking the rights away from the little guy.
And I want to touch on something real quick, right? And I would definitely I like to speak to the viewers, you know, because it's important. If you notice when this man talk, he always talk about the change. And the change they made as far as the Rikers Island with the Browder case. That was very important because if anybody saw that documentary, it's a great documentary, you guys need to see it. So I see you big on the change of your cases, not just the financial part, but the change of it. That Browder case, I was very happy that, you know, the Rikers Island, you know, they closing it down and, you know, they're going to do some other things. That was very important right there.
And we hope that government follows through with what it's promised, because it hasn't happened yet. They promised that within 10 years, Rikers is going to be closed. Let's make sure they actually close it.
All right, so Mr. Rubenstein, just tell them where they can find you one more time. Tell them the number.
That's 1-800-447-HURT. 1-800-47-HURT. Call now.
All right, so
we got this podcast,
yeah.
Super Lawyers. He also has Scott Renicki, that's how you say it, and Robert Machuca. You know, so this is a strong team here. It's all about team. We a team, all about team.
And I might also add that we have 10 lawyers in our firm. So if someone calls, you may not get me personally, but you'll get one of our lawyers, and they're all trained to give free consultations and free advice to people who call.
And also, if you want to purchase this book, you can contact us at thebeat139@gmail.com. You know, we're going to help him distribute his book in the community because it's a very good book. So just get at us, thebeat139@gmail.com, if you're interested in purchasing this great man's
As a matter of fact, I'll offer 25 books to the first 25 people who reach out to you as a gift. And you can figure out how to get it to them. But I think that it's worth reading. So let me offer you,
free, first 25,
free.
that free.
So you can read the book, and I think there's words of wisdom in it that are very good for people, especially young people, to read.
There you go. So tell them what podcast show you're on right now, then, Rubenstein. What podcast show you're on right now?
What case?
What podcast show that you're on right now?
The Beat, 139.
There you go.
I want to thank The Beat 139 for having me. It's always a pleasure to interact with the community. And I want to thank you guys for doing it, because this is so important in the community to have the voice of the community right there at the public's fingertips.
That's a fact.
Once again, we want to thank you for coming to the show.
Great interview. Great interview.
All right.
All right.
Baby,
Did you guys take the picture already?
No, we got to take the
Come on,
picture
let's
now.
take it.
That was a great interview.
Yes, that was. Doc, stop making me feel like I'm 5.
Real quick, how did your accident happen?
Yeah, but our feedback,
How did your accident happen?
I slipped on the mason. It was John's fault.
What's up, man? Come on, man. Stop that, man.
You have nobody to sue.
What's happening?
The only way you can sue is if you have
This your phone?
Yeah, that's it.
I have the
And you're restricted to the